It is August, which means pundits and sports media folks are all talking season previews, which team will be winners, which team will be a loser, and who among the top players is primed for the biggest season. In the age of sports gambling, preseason is a huge time for placing bets on the stats, records, and awards that teams and players will achieve by season's end. Ignoring team accolades, the biggest award in college football is no doubt the Heisman Trophy, which honors college football's top player. The odds-on favorites for this year's Heisman are Texas quarterback Arch Manning at plus 650, LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier at plus 850, and Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik at plus 950. These three are all fantastic quarterbacks with huge potential, but what is the likelihood that one of them actually hoists the Heisman in December? According to history, not very likely at all. Today I want to dig into the trends to see if we can figure out who the truly most likely Heisman winner is before the season even begins. If one of the three guys I end up with by the end of this video comes through, I expect endless praise and validation. To get started, there are a few criteria that each of the past 10 Heisman winners have met before their Heisman season started. All 10 of the winners were members of a team ranked in the AP preseason top 25, and 8 of them entered the year with Heisman odds of plus 4,000 or better. Most actually had better odds than that, but last year's winner, for example, Travis Hunter, only had plus 3,500 odds in the preseason. Of course, some positions are more likely to take home the crown than others as well. Of the last 10 Heisman winners, 7 are quarterbacks, 1 is a running back, and 2 are wide receivers, although Travis Hunter played both receiver and cornerback in his Heisman season. Now that we've outlined some criteria, let's take a look at which candidates may be hiding in plain sight as they prepare for their Heisman winning season in 2025. Depending on whose betting odds you trust, there are about 23 players with plus 4,000 Heisman odds at the moment. Remembering that each of the last 10 winners was part of an AP preseason top 25 team, that allows us to remove a couple players right off the bat. Based on this logic, we can strike the following players from the list: Auburn's quarterback Jackson Arnold and Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola. Okay, so not too many guys trimmed off the list there. It looks like the odds makers might know what they're doing after all. Now that we're down to 21 likely candidates, what else can we use to differentiate? The schools and conferences that past winners attended don't provide too much decisive evidence that one school or one conference dominate the award. The past 10 winners have come from 4 conferences. The SEC leads with 5, the Big 12 has had 3, the ACC had 1, and the Pac-12 had 1. Wow, it looks like the Big 10 hasn't had a Heisman winner in the past 10 seasons. That's a surprise, since many consider that conference to be atop the college football mountain right next to the SEC. The last time a Big Ten player won a Heisman Trophy was 2006, nearly 20 years ago when Troy Smith of Ohio State earned the trophy. In the past 10 voting cycles, they've actually only had one runner-up in Aiden Hutchinson, who lost to Bryce Young by one of the largest margins in recent memory. With this revelation in mind, I wouldn't say it's impossible for a Big Ten player to hoist the award, but we should be far less optimistic about Big Ten players who haven't already established themselves as college football stars. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and scratch the following players from the list: Ohio State's Julian Sayin and Oregon's Dante Moore. These young quarterbacks haven't started a single game for their current team, and gaining the college football world's attention and admiration in only one season is something very few Heisman winners have done in the past. The obvious example is Johnny Manziel, but not many other athletes garner the same kind of attention he did. The only Big Ten quarterbacks to finish top 5 in Heisman voting in the past 7 years have been Dylan Gabriel, CJ Stroud, and Justin Fields. All of these guys were cemented as superstars long before they were named finalists, and for those reasons, I'm comfortable removing Sayin and Moore from our list for now. That reasoning actually calls into question some of our other quarterbacks too. How many new quarterbacks without significant starting experience have won Heismans or even placed high in voting recently? Truthfully, not very many. Most of these guys were seniors or even super seniors with tons of experience. The exceptions are 2021 Bryce Young, who won as a sophomore in his first full year as a starter, and 2021 CJ Stroud, who finished 4th in voting as a redshirt freshman and first-year starter. Those were 2 compelling young quarterbacks, but remember, this is the pre-transfer portal era. Proven, experienced quarterbacks didn't have the opportunity to play for a contender after proving themselves as a smaller program. More recent finalists like Dylan Gabriel, Cameron Ward, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, and Caleb Williams all transferred to championship-caliber programs after proving themselves at another school. Does this mean that similar quarterbacks like Carson Beck, John Mateer, or Sam Levitt should be safer bets than even the favorites like Manning, Klubnik, and Nussmeier? Maybe. But I'm not sure we've got the sample size to suggest that this trend is here to stay. I do think that there's something to the experience piece though, as nearly all the quarterbacks mentioned before had been a full-time starter for at least one season prior to the year they finished as a finalist. For that reason, a few more quarterbacks fall off the list, including some of the biggest names. Say goodbye to Texas's Arch Manning, Bama's Ty Simpson, Georgia's Gunnar Stockton, Ole Miss's Austin Simmons, and Notre Dame's CJ Carr. Maybe one of these guys will be the next breakout star Johnny Manziel, but recent history is not on their side. Alright, so our list is now whittled down to 14 with only 11 quarterbacks. But what about the other position players? The remaining 3 players we have on our list are Ohio State wide receiver Jeremiyah Smith, Alabama wide receiver Ryan Williams, and Notre Dame running back Jeremiyah Love. I think all of these guys could be Heisman finalists, and I wouldn't be surprised if they all are, but we're looking for the Heisman winner. We already established that non-QB winners are relatively rare, so who are those past winners? The last 3 were Colorado's Travis Hunter, Alabama's DeVonta Smith, and Alabama's Derrick Henry. Although Hunter and Smith both played wide receiver, they should really be viewed as different positions due to Hunter's unique two-way play as a cornerback and wide receiver. None of our 3 candidates mentioned before play defense, at least they haven't before, so let's ignore Travis Hunter as a comparison for now. So, how do Ryan Williams and Jeremiyah Smith compare to the last wide receiver to win the award, DeVonta Smith? Let's dive into the numbers. DeVonta Smith won the 2020 Heisman after putting up an insane 1,856 receiving yards and 23 touchdowns in the weird season that was 2020. Smith was the star of a high-powered offense that other teams were hopeless to defend, and his numbers obviously speak for themselves. He put up nearly 700 yards more than the next closest FBS receiver, which is a gap most college football receivers would be happy if that was their season total. Smith's quarterback, Mac Jones, also led college football in passing that year and completed 117 passes to DeVonta Smith. Their number 2 receiver, John Mechie, only caught 55 passes, which is less than half of what Smith received. This season is a true masterpiece in the wide receiver position and can never be taken away from Smith, but it is also important to note that the Heisman runner-up, Trevor Lawrence, only got to play 8 games prior to award voting. Not only was Lawrence affected, but top programs around the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 in particular played abbreviated schedules, while Alabama continued with a 10-game regular season. You can't hold all of that against DeVonta Smith's Heisman run, which was historic and absolutely earned, but it does make it feel far less likely that Jeremiyah Smith or Ryan Williams can replicate that in a more normal 2025 season. Ignoring all the pandemic factors, does it seem realistic that either Jeremiyah Smith or Ryan Williams will play alongside the nation's leading passer while catching nearly double the passes that their number 2 wide receiver does? Jeremiyah Smith will catch passes for the first time from starter Julian Sayin, who is supremely talented. It is possible that he could be among the nation's passing leaders, but the hard part to believe is that the stable of wide receivers at Ohio State will receive so far fewer targets than Smith. Ohio State's known as wide receiver U for a reason, regularly having 3, 4, or even 5 future NFL stars at the position on roster at any given time. Carnell Tate is a star at the position in his own right, and Brandon Ennis is bound to get a lot of passes thrown his way too. Due to that balance of talent, I just can't see Sayin or really any other quarterback hammering one receiver as often as DeVonta Smith was targeted. So how about Ryan Williams at Alabama? He's a talented wide receiver in his own right, no doubt, but the fact that his starting quarterback has not been officially named yet may be cause for concern that he will even have a guy capable of giving him Heisman-level opportunities. Ty Simpson is assumed to be the starter, but after 3 seasons on roster, he hasn't made it obvious that he's the top choice over others like Austin Mack and even freshman Keelan Russell. The QB situation does not give me confidence that Alabama will have a top passer this season, which nearly eliminates the possibility of Williams being a Heisman winner. While both Jeremiyah Smith and Ryan Williams are elite players at their position and surefire first-round picks in the future, their situations don't really lend themselves to a DeVonta Smith 2020 type season. We'll drop those guys from the list now too. Our final non-QB on the list, Jeremiyah Love, will be the top dog in Notre Dame's backfield again this year, following an 1,100-plus yard rushing season for the Irish as a sophomore last season. Running backs have been snubbed from the Heisman voting for years, as fans and teams continue to devalue this position more and more each season. The last Heisman winner at running back was Derrick Henry of Alabama in 2015, a very different time in college football. It doesn't feel quite right to compare these two eras, so I actually want to look at a more recent season from last year's Heisman runner-up, Ashton Jeanty of Boise State. Jeanty finished in a very close second, and most pundits agree that if he had played at a Power 4 program, he would have had a really good chance to edge out Travis Hunter for the trophy. So let's look at the numbers. Jeanty rushed for 2,601 yards and 29 touchdowns while averaging a monstrous 7 yards per carry for his conference champion and college football playoff quarterfinalist Boise State Broncos. He never failed to rush for 100 yards in any game that season, and he broke 200 yards rushing 6 different times. Nothing against Jeremiyah Love, but if those numbers didn't win Jeanty a Heisman, I don't think voters are interested in giving the award to a running back anytime soon. We'll knock Love off the list too. So now, with all those players dropped from consideration, who do we have left? 11 quarterbacks remain. LSU's Nussmeier, Clemson's Klubnik, Penn State's Drew Aller, Florida's DJ Lagway, South Carolina's Lenoris Sellers, Miami's Carson Beck, Oklahoma's John Mateer, Arizona State's Sam Levitt, SMU's Kevin Jennings, Kansas State's Avery Johnson, and Texas A&M's Marcel Reed. Based on recent trends, I can say with some confidence that one of these 11 guys will win the Heisman Trophy, but which will it be? I have my personal favorites, but let's continue to go with the trends. For the final cut, I will be hyper-focusing on the last 2 Heisman voting cycles due to the prevalence of NIL in the transfer portal, which equally influenced those 2 college football seasons. The QBs who received at least 25 first-place Heisman votes in those years were LSU's Jaden Daniels, Washington's Michael Penix Jr., and Oregon's Bo Nix in 2023. In 2024, not a single quarterback received 25 or more first-place votes. So what is the same between those 3 players? Jaden Daniels is the epitome of a dual-threat quarterback. He ran for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns in his Heisman-winning season. Penix is a pure pocket passer who ripped opposing teams through the air, and Bo Nix falls somewhere in the middle of those two. Penix and Nix finished as the only 2 quarterbacks over 4,000 passing yards, and Penix even topped Nix by 400 yards when it was all said and done. Daniels, the eventual Heisman winner, dominated as a passer and as a runner, which gave him the edge over more dominant passers in Nix and Penix. Penix throwing 11 interceptions also didn't help his case, and it's possible that a lower number in that department could have propelled him to the number 1 spot in voting. The most significant thing in this case, apart from elite talent, is offensive system. All 3 of these quarterbacks, Daniels, Nix, and Penix Jr., had their full control of the offense and could really assert themselves in ways that other quarterbacks around the country didn't have the opportunity to do. Offenses that allow their quarterbacks to pace the offense instead of their run game lead to much gaudier stats for their quarterback, obviously. If QBs in these types of systems can take the reins, deliver accurate passing, limit turnovers, they'll find themselves with some really great numbers by the end of the year in most cases. Some of the earlier listed teams don't really fit this archetype, preferring instead to let their run game pace the offense. I think that will ultimately hurt the chances for quarterbacks like Penn State's Drew Aller and Florida's DJ Lagway, which led me to drop them from our list. Additionally, if you don't have the dual threat upside of a Jaden Daniels, or even at minimum a Bo Nix, you'll have to be nearly perfect in the passing game. LSU's Garrett Nussmeier and Miami's Carson Beck have flashed the potential to put up a Penix-like season without having much to offer as runners. Clemson's Cade Klubnik, South Carolina's Lenoris Sellers, Oklahoma's John Mateer, Arizona State's Sam Levitt, and Kansas State's Avery Johnson have all showed that they're more in the Jaden Daniels ilk, with the potential to put up great numbers as passers and runners. To me, SMU's Kevin Jennings and Texas A&M's Marcel Reed are sort of stuck in the middle of the 2 categories, which puts them in great but not quite Heisman territory. At this point, we wave goodbye to Jennings and Reed. Like I said earlier, my original intention was to get to a top 3 in this video, so that's what we're going to do. We're down to 7 quarterbacks right now: Nussmeier, Beck, Klubnik, Sellers, Mateer, Levitt, and Johnson. An easy way to trim the list would be to remove the underclassmen, but I'm not sure that's as big of a factor as it may seem. Instead, I'm going to focus in on a factor that is often overlooked until it's far too late: the offensive line. Ranking each of these quarterbacks' offensive lines from top to bottom, I would probably put something together that looks like this: number 1 Miami, number 2 Clemson, number 3 LSU, number 4 Arizona State, number 5 Oklahoma, number 6 South Carolina, and number 7 Kansas State. This ranking considers returning starters, experience, and of course the level of competition. Clemson and Miami both possess SEC quality O-lines while having the luxury of facing ACC competition. I like Klubnik and Beck for those reasons to cover 2 of our 3 spots. For the last slot, I feel like I have to go SEC, which has accounted for 7 of the last 10 Heisman winners. Between Garrett Nussmeier, John Mateer, and Lenoris Sellers, it's a pretty tough choice. While it's no hard and fast rule, typically teams in playoff contention give their Heisman candidates a boost as voting approaches. LSU and South Carolina each have a really good shot at the playoff, but Oklahoma feels like quite a long shot. Because of that, I'm not going to pick Mateer. Between Nussmeier and Sellers, I think I'll have to fall back on the dual threat ability of Sellers. While Nussmeier is definitely the better passer, I don't think he's so much better that it overcomes his total inability to run the ball. So there you have it. My final picks for Heisman Trophy winner this year are Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik, Miami quarterback Carson Beck, and South Carolina quarterback LaNorris Sellers. Of course, there are a million ways to evaluate recent trends in Heisman voting, and I'm sure people can come up with processes that involve deep data dives and hours of number crunching, but I'm no data scientist, and that sounds like a lot of work. I'd love to hear what you all think this year's Heisman race will look like. Will we see another quarterback take home the trophy, or do you foresee someone breaking all the recent trends like we saw last year with the two-way superstar Travis Hunter? Let me know who your money is on in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe for more videos just like it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.